And before we start, we are all aware of the terrible events of recent weeks, Egypt and elsewhere, and I'm sure members will wish to join me in remembering those that have been killed or injured in these attacks, and in sending our condolences to those that are grieving. And now we have a statement by the First Minister. First Minister.
Diolch, Llywydd. Mae Cymru yn sefyll ochr wrth ochr gyda phobl Ffrainc yn sgil y digwyddiadau ffiaidd ym Mharis nos Wener. Mae pobl Paris wedi talu'n ddrud am yr hawl i fyw mewn rhyddid, a mae dyletswydd arno ni i gyd i warchod gwerthoedd rhyddid a democratiaeth ar bob cyfrif. I know that all members will want to join in expressing our sorrow and revulsion at the atrocities in Paris on Friday night. The people of Wales stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with the French people at this time of mourning. The people of Paris have paid a heavy price for exercising the right to live freely. Freedom is a value we share and a cause we must all defend, everywhere and all of the time. Llywydd, I wrote yesterday to the French ambassador expressing our sorrow and support, and I attached a copy of that letter to the written statement tabled to members yesterday. Les gens du Pays de Galles souhaitent montrer leur solidarité pendant cette période difficile pour le peuple français. Flags on Welsh Government buildings across Wales were flown at half-mast yesterday and again today as a mark of our respect. I know, Llywydd, that members and staff who were here yesterday gathered on the steps of the Senedd to mark the Europe-wide minute's silence, and that other groups across Wales have shown their respects in their own ways. Llywydd, security and intelligence are clearly UK government competencies, but over the weekend I participated in the UK government security briefing chaired by the Prime Minister, the so-called COBRA committee, and the Welsh Government remains in active contact with UK colleagues on security issues, and the Minister for Public Services today met the police for further briefing. Llywydd, I would like to place on record our appreciation for the work of the police and the security services who work day in and day out to protect people across our country. The United Kingdom has itself suffered from terrorism. We know for a fact that a number of other attacks have been foiled at the planning stage, and arrests have been made here in Wales in the past, and we know that individuals have travelled from here to Syria. We cannot be complacent about our own backyard. The public should remain vigilant and should not hesitate to contact the police if they have suspicious or unusual activity to report. Llywydd, I would also like to place on record my support and solidarity for the Muslim community here in Wales, the overwhelming majority of whom share our revulsion at the terrorism carried out in the name of a corrupted view of their religion. Muslims make a powerful and positive contribution to Welsh society, and we will all stand together in opposing extremism and aggression in our community.
Thank you. Andrew Archie-Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you, First Minister, for making this statement this afternoon, which enables us, obviously, to put our own thoughts on the record and also pose some questions to you about the role the Welsh Government can play in supporting the efforts of the UK Government and in the international community in facing down these dastardly crimes, acts, call them what you will, that are so abhorrent. On Friday night in my own household, we were welcoming home my son from his placement in college, and it was a happy household. And many households in Paris would have seen their loved ones go off to sporting events, to take a meal, or just to enjoy the life in Paris. But sadly, unlike our household where our son came home, many sons, daughters, loved ones did not return from that tragic series of events that were taking place in Paris. We stand shoulder to shoulder with the French people, we stand shoulder to shoulder with the Egyptian people and anyone who faces the abhorrent acts of terrorism that are undertaken to perverse the cause of Islam. I agree entirely with what you have said, First Minister, about the Muslim faith. The Muslim faith is a faith of peace. It is not a faith of war. It is not a faith of terrorism. It is not a faith that should be abused. But sadly, there are people on the extremities of that faith who have chosen to do that. And it is incumbent on us to stand shoulder to shoulder with the French people. It is incumbent on us to stand shoulder to shoulder with people across the world to face down that evil. And I do hope that the solidarity that has been shown on the steps of the Senedd here over the last couple of days, the remarks that have been made in London, Edinburgh and Belfast show that across the United Kingdom we are as one with the French people in their hour of need. There are 2 points I would like to make to you, First Minister, if I may. The first point is in the field of education and what help and support that we can give our education system in supporting any hint of radicalisation that people might find is coming through the education system. That has been shown as being a route in to trying to take out vulnerable people and show them a course, an alternative course than should be taken on by adopting the radical ways that people have chosen to take people out to Syria and to other parts of the Middle East, as we've seen from people going from Cardiff. That is not the way forward. We are responsible in this institution for the education system, and I'd be grateful to understand what protocols are in place to make sure that Welsh Government are supporting schools, supporting colleges, to make sure young people are offered an alternative route to radicalisation. The second point I would make to you, First Minister, is that it is vital we offer role models in the Muslim community so that they can be used to show that there are so much positive aspects to the Muslim faith across all communities, so that we do stand shoulder to shoulder and people do not feel that they are marginalised by society and that they are victims of harassment, whether it be in Cardiff or other towns and cities across Wales. We did hear that in the Sunday Supplement programme on Sunday, that there were various Muslims who said that they do face that level of intimidation. That should not be allowed. We do not recognise Islam as a faith that turns to terrorism. It is a faith of peace, and we should make sure we should do all we can to offer the role models that ultimately can show that we are one united society facing down these terrible acts that have been inflicted not just in Paris but in other countries around the world.
First Minister.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his comments. We do, of course, have community cohesion coordinators whose role it is to encourage cohesion and to help to identify issues as they arise. We have the Faith Communities Forum, which represents a number of different faiths, and the forum itself is a place where difficulties can be raised and identified and eventually, of course, dealt with. When it comes to schools, Estyn, of course, has a role in terms of monitoring and inspecting all schools in Wales, and it's for Estyn, of course, to determine whether a school is delivering the curriculum as it should. I think we should emphasise, of course, that we are talking here about a very small minority. All religions in their time have had extremists who have sought to use that religion in order to kill others. The people who carried out the attacks on Friday in Paris are no more representative of Islam than the Ku Klux Klan is of Christianity. They are an extreme fringe, and the vast majority of people who describe themselves and think of themselves as true Muslims would be and are appalled by the attacks that took place on Friday. In terms of role models, there are role models in British society that show that it's more than possible to rise to the heights of civic society through politics or indeed through sport. What's important, of course, is to ensure that the kind of role models that not exclusively young men, but particularly young men are attracted to in Syria, in Iraq and beyond, are people who should lose the appeal that they have to some young men and young women and to show that what they are, in effect, are gangsters, no more than that, with a bloodlust. They are not representative of Islam, they are not representative of progress, they represent only themselves, and they represent only murder and mayhem.
Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, I'd like to take the opportunity to add Plaid Cymru's support to the sentiments that you've expressed in response to these attacks in Paris, and Plaid Cymru's thoughts and condolences are with the families of those murdered and injured in Paris last weekend, and our sympathies and thoughts are also with the victims of terror attacks that have and are occurring all over the world on a regular basis. First Minister, over the weekend I listened to your remarks as to how Wales should respond. Obviously, we have very important attractions and events that take place in this country, and people will want assurances that such places are made as safe as possible. So I'd appreciate to hear your thoughts on that point. We're also having to endure significant cuts to policing, and so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about how we can reassure people that the threats that we face can be met in the light of these cuts to policing budgets. I'm sure that you are aware that today the Prime Minister has announced further counter-terrorism measures, so I'd be interested to hear what role the Welsh Government is playing in such a process in order to ensure that there is a Welsh perspective into that. And finally, First Minister, as you've already alluded, it is more important than ever for Welsh communities to pull together at a time like this. I am concerned about a potential backlash and hay potentially being made from far-right parties. Welsh Muslims are a part of our society, and of course the vast majority would reject extremism and violence. So would the First Minister agree with me that we should not allow what the preachers of hate want us to do, and that is to turn on one another?
Minister.
I thank the Leader of Plaid Cymru for those comments. I particularly agree with the comment that she made at the end, that there is no greater victory for terrorists than for people to give up their freedoms and for people to turn against each other within their own communities. That's exactly what they want, and she is right, of course, to point that out. The Welsh Counter-Terrorism Unit has the role of examining security in Wales. I do receive briefings from that unit, and its role, of course, is to ensure that where there is a particular level of threat, that level is understood, respected, and, of course, that action can be taken regarding that level of threat. It is worth emphasising that the level of threat has not changed since the events in Paris. It remains at severe. What we have said to people is that people should carry on their lives as normal. There is no need to change the way that people live their lives. But again, we ask people to be vigilant, as they have been over the course of the last few months, and to report any suspicious activity to the authorities. COBRA is the committee that has been meeting to examine the issues arising from Paris. I was part of the meeting, as was the First Minister of Scotland, on Saturday morning. Officials from the Welsh Government are part of those meetings, and we do get briefings back in terms of what those meetings are discussing. I too have been worried about the prospect of a backlash against the peaceful and law-abiding Muslim community that we have here in Wales, and I have received briefings in that regard. Whilst it is true to say that individual Muslims are more fearful of their safety, there's been no suggestion so far of any violent backlash. I sincerely hope it stays that way. Unfortunately, we are aware that there are plans by some far-right groups to organise demonstrations, particularly outside mosques. They have their own reasons for doing that. But thus far, as I've said, the people of Wales have stayed together, and we as a government, I'm sure I speak for all in this chamber, will do all that we can to ensure that that cohesion continues in the future.
Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and could I thank the First Minister for his statement to the Chamber this afternoon. Presiding Officer, it was with an initial sense of disbelief and then a growing sense of horror as I watched the events in Paris unfold on Friday night. And on behalf of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, I would like to express our sincere condolences to the families of those affected, the communities in and around Paris affected, and indeed the entire French nation. But, Presiding Officer, we mustn't forget that the whole point of terrorism is to intimidate and terrify. And the horrors of Friday night were indeed terrifying. But it's how we respond now as a nation and in an international community that matters the most. And we cannot let those terrorists win. We must never allow them and their actions to change our way of life. We must never allow them and their actions to turn people against one another. And we must never allow them and their actions to diminish our values of freedom and of fairness. We must stand up, we must be strong, and we must be united in our response. Could I concur with what the First Minister said about the contribution of the Muslim community to our country? The perpetrators of these horrific crimes preach a perverse corruption of the faith of Islam that bears absolutely no resemblance to what the vast majority of Muslims in Wales and across the UK actually believe in. So can I ask the First Minister, what additional steps can the Welsh Government take to support the Muslim community in Wales, not just from the potential backlash which may occur, but actually support them within their communities to try and fight this perverse corruption so that they can be resilient communities and they can protect their young people from the messages of hate that some people would like to infiltrate and to infect their young people with. Thank you.
I know that I thank the leader of the Liberal Democrats for her comments. I know that the Muslim community in Wales is working hard to counter the attraction that there is for some in supporting or joining Islamic State. They fight, of course, against what is available online and the work of those who may be undetected, who preach hatred. But I know that much work is done via community cohesion coordinators, via community groups, via the representative organisations of Muslims in Wales to seek to identify issues as quickly as possible so that they might be dealt with. And thus far that has worked. We will continue, of course, to work very closely with the Muslim community and the community at large to make sure that the terrorists, because that's what they are, do not succeed in their aim of setting people against each other. That would be a tragedy for all of us in Wales, and I am sure that the people of Wales will not allow these terrorists to fulfill their aim of setting people against each other because of religion, but also, of course, setting people of the same religion against each other. We mustn't forget, of course, that these people who carried out the attacks on Friday would not hesitate to carry out those attacks on Muslims who didn't share their particular view of Islam, and they are as much a threat to the Muslim community as they are to the community at large.
Thank you very much. We now move to item 2, which is questions to the First Minister, and question 1 this afternoon is Andrew Archie-Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on winter resilience of the health provision in South Wales Central?
Yes, health boards, local authorities and the ambulance service have developed integrated plans for the forthcoming winter. And positive actions implemented by health and social care organisations include stronger joint working with GP out-of-hours services and extended working hours to include weekends and evenings.
Thank you, First Minister, for that answer. And I appreciate many of these plans in the initial stages are the responsibility of the local health boards. But having 2 health boards cover my electoral region, Cwm Taff and Cardiff and Vale, one of the things that always seems to happen whenever we have inclement weather, particularly very cold weather, is the roadways within the health estate, shall we say, and the car parks freeze over because of lack of gritting and lack of preparation for that cold weather. And therefore, the hospital itself comes to a stop because, for obvious reasons, you can't get people in and out of those hospitals. That's happened on numerous occasions since I've been elected here in 2007, and I appreciate again the local health boards determined the initial plans, but what role is Welsh Government taking to make sure that the plans put forward are robust enough to deal with this particular problem that ultimately has the whole hospital on shutdown because the outside estate hasn't been maintained?
Well, I can say that all integrated winter plans will be published on LHB websites by the end of this month. Welsh Government officials have scrutinised the draft integrated winter plans and provided feedback to the health and social care organisations, seeking further assurances where necessary. And all NHS organisations have in place arrangements to help maintain services in the event of severe weather. I would expect that to include, of course, access to hospitals and ensuring that the car parks are kept accessible and safe.
Question 2, Elena Parrott.
Diolch Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on the Cardiff City deal?
Yes, city deals present an opportunity for Welsh local authorities to drive regional economic growth, and I was pleased to support the Cardiff bid and look to the UK Government now to provide its support and funding.
Thank you, First Minister. I welcome your statement and the agreement on a funding package to the UK Government. However, city deals were never just about money. They are, of course, about empowering local authorities and city regions to drive their own economic regeneration, as you've said. What powers are the Welsh Government looking to devolve to the Cardiff capital region alongside this funding package that you hope to obtain from the UK Treasury?
Well, at this moment in time, what we have said to local authorities is that we would expect them to administer the match funding that would come from UK Government. It would be for them to decide how that money is spent. Of course, we'd want to work with them to ensure that they weren't duplicating what we were doing or that there wasn't competition between each other in terms of the provision of services. That would represent a substantial amount of money that will be available to local authorities and a substantial amount of leeway to them in terms of being able to spend it.
Jenny Rathbone.
Obviously, the announcement yesterday by the BBC that they've signed a contract to move to Central Square in Cardiff is very welcome news because that secures the bus and tram station to fit in with the train station. How will this city deal enable us to fast forward phase 2 of the metro scheme?
Well, with regard to the metro, we are putting money on the table for an integration fund that would include the metro. We have to bear in mind, of course, that the metro has been talked about as a concept, but we have not identified money for the metro. As part of the city deal, we are prepared to put new money into the city deal. The metro will be part of that, and we trust that will then attract the match funding from the UK Treasury.
William Graham.
Officer. First Minister, I've had the privilege to meet with members of the Cardiff capital region and very impressed, as I'm sure you are, by their depth of vision for the region. I'm hopeful that what they have proposed can take place. It also perhaps a first to get 10 local authorities to actually combine against such a visionary project. I would assure you of the support from the Welsh Conservatives in this matter, and we will do our bit to influence government where we can.
Well, I'm grateful to the member for his comments. This is an opportunity to show that the UK Government, Welsh Government and local authorities can work together for Wales, despite party differences. We have done a bit. Local authorities have done our bit. We now look to the UK Government to do its bit.
Councillor.
Minister, you'll be aware that I raised on numerous occasions the importance of schemes such as the Metro, economically and socially transformational for areas such as Taffili, Pontypridd and for the South Wales valleys. I wonder if you could outline the discussions that you may have had with local authorities such as Rondalcan and Taff, and how you actually see the Cardiff City deal, despite the perhaps slightly misleading nail, being of benefit to actually the whole of that area, transformational for Taffili, for Pontypridd and for the valleys of South Wales.
Well, very much so. The Metro would be delivered in 3 phases. That is our intention. It would include a number of options in terms of transport, particularly with regard to, in the future, to new light rail connections, to bus rapid transit as well, to extend the current network. It is right to say that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform not the capital, but the areas around Cardiff, to connect the area far more closely than is the case at the moment, in order not just for people to travel more quickly into Cardiff, but of course to attract investment out of Cardiff through improving transport links to our communities further north, west and east.
We now move to questions of party leaders, and first this afternoon, Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Archie-Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, last Thursday, I think it was, you held a Carwyn Connect meeting in Holyhead, I believe it was. And as usual in North Wales, quite rightly so, many of the questions you took were on health. And in answer to one of the questions, you talked about Betsy Cadwallader and one single health board, and these were your words, may not be necessarily the right option going forward, i.e. one health board delivering health services across the whole of North Wales. Now, we've had 2 health reorganisations under Labour already in the last 12 years. Is it your thinking as First Minister and the current government's thinking that there does need to be more health boards in Wales delivering health services, and in particular in North Wales? Or if that isn't the case, why did you respond in that way to the question?
Well, there are no plans to change anything before the election, I can say that. But there is an issue with regard to whether one single board is the way forward for the whole of the North, or whether alternative options should be looked at. Those issues will need to be explored in the future.
That's interesting thinking, and I'm not quite sure how that helps the health board up there, which is currently in special measures, being told that it's going to be placed in special measures for 2 years, and at the end of it, it will emerge an organisation fit for purpose, I think is the language I've heard spoken by your Deputy Minister and the Minister of Health himself. So you clearly say that there are other plans obviously being formulated by the Welsh Government. But also what's come forward today is the announcement that obviously Betsy are paying the salary of the former Chief Executive to be seconded into the English NHS. Can you understand how frustrating, how annoying that must be for residents, for patients, for clinicians, the length and breadth of North Wales, who are finding £200,000 worth of taxpayer money that was allocated for health services in North Wales is paying for someone who the Welsh Government didn't deem a fit and proper person to run the health services in North Wales?
Well, let me be clear that ultimately this is a matter for the employer, but I will provide some further information this afternoon for members. First of all, there's been no severance package for Trevor Pert. He has stepped down from his role as Chief Executive. By mutual agreement, he has been seconded from Betsy Cadwallader to work with the NHS in England, but as part of that secondment, he will produce a lessons learned report to Betsy Cadwallader and the Chief Executive of the NHS in Wales on integration across partner organisations and the NHS more generally. At the end of that secondment period, in October of next year, he will cease to be an employee of the board.
First Minister, that's pretty expensive homework in anyone's exercise book, to be honest with you, but I hope you can share my understanding of the complete frustration that many people in North Wales will feel when they see this package put together and ultimately question how the hell it's come about. But I'd also like to raise with you the issue tonight that week in, week out are covering on health matters closer to home around the Princess of Wales Hospital, and in particular the families that have partaken of that programme who have said that what they require to bring closure to many of the issues that they, as grieving families or patients who have had poor treatment at the hospital are having to deal with, to bring closure to those issues, they require a public inquiry, an independent public inquiry. And indeed, experts connected with this particular field, Dr. Bill Kirkup and Julie Bailey, who have dealt with these type of issues across the whole of the UK, say that the only way to address the historical problems that blight ABMU and Princess of Wales being able to move on is to have that independent inquiry. I've asked you several times to commission such an inquiry. Will you, based on the evidence that keeps coming forward, and to allow these families to have closure on the episodes of care that they refer to, commission such an independent inquiry so that families, clinicians and Princess of Wales Hospital can move on?
Well, firstly, I haven't seen the programme. Secondly, the programme makers obviously have to be careful given the fact that there's still a current legal process being gone through against 3 of the nurses. They must be careful what they say in terms of the programme tonight, but that's a matter for them. We have recognised the issues at the Princess of Wales Hospital. That's why, of course, we commissioned the Andrews report, That gave us the recommendations that we needed to move forward with. They have led to more stringent checks on hospitals, particularly unannounced checks. And we believe that in dealing with it in this way, the issue has been dealt with. No new evidence has come forward to suggest that Professor Andrews was in any way wrong, so it wouldn't be the intention of the government to commission a public inquiry at this stage.
We now move to Lead Reply Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch Llywydd. I'd like to return to events over the weekend and the aftermath, and in particular to drill down on this question of community cohesion, First Minister. An important point that you made over the weekend, and you've reiterated again here this afternoon, is the need to pull together, to stand together, and not allow ourselves to be divided by terror. And I agree wholeheartedly with what you've said on that. But I'd like to ask what measures you intend to take to help unite Welsh communities to ensure that there is no backlash against the many thousands of Muslims in this country who live here in peace and who find terror as repulsive as the rest of the population. You mentioned earlier the community cohesion coordinators that you have. I wonder if you can tell us what kinds of work those coordinators can do to help prevent such a backlash.
Well, the first thing that I did was to ask for more information regarding any potential threats to the Muslim community. I received that information. Secondly, we do have a close network that enables us to work with the Muslim community to identify problems early on, whether that's done through the Community Cohesion Coordinators as part of their role, whether it's done through the Faith Communities Forum, or whether it's done informally with officials. So I'm content with the pipeline that we have in order for information to be fed back and forth. But I did feel it was important to satisfy myself that all is being done that could be done in order to protect our communities, and particularly, of course, law-abiding and peace-loving Muslims who make up the vast majority of that community.
First Minister, without a doubt, people are going to be increasingly fearful of the threat posed by ISIS, Daesh, and there will be need to work on promoting unity and cohesion within our communities. And of course, the current conflict is linked as well to many other issues, such as the refugees and the pressures on the EU in trying to cope with that particular crisis. Do you agree with me that as we try to accommodate those people who are fleeing the horrors of war, that we must at all times ensure that local people are treated fairly and are seen to be treated fairly in terms of access to services and housing, and that we must have a programme of integration that promotes cohesion and fair play to all? And would you agree with me that if we fail on that front, that there's a real risk that bad feeling and resentment in communities could grow if public bodies are not seen to be acting in the most sensitive way that they possibly can?
Yes, our point of view is that as refugees arrive in Wales, the funding to support them should come from the UK government, rather than it coming from the Welsh government budget, because this is a non-devolved issue. There is one point that I think is worth emphasising, and that is there will be some, no doubt, who will be concerned that amongst those people arriving as refugees will be some people who arrive with ill intent, who are using the refugee crisis as a cloak to hide under as they arrive in Europe. Now, what I can say is that the UN Commission, the High Commission on Refugees, is involved in screening refugees. There is a security process in place, and the vast majority of people, of course, are just fleeing war at the end of the day. So it is important to emphasise that in case people are fearful as a result of the flow of refugees into Europe. But it is right to say that where we resettle ultimately very small numbers of people, that extra funding is made available so that they can be resettled as quickly as possible, so their needs can be met, yes, but also, of course, so their skills can be utilised, because so many of the people who are refugees are highly skilled, and to be able to utilise their skills in our economy will be important.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. I think that there's no doubt that there are some people who will try to make political capital out of this situation, and you're right to say what you've just said. I think it's right to say that at times like this we can all feel pretty helpless. However, I think there is something practical that we can do from Wales. Would you agree that as representatives and leaders of political parties we have a crucial role to play in promoting unity in our communities, and that we should take every opportunity to stand against allowing people to turn against each other as citizens of Wales. As united we stand, divided we fall. Now, Muslims in Wales are an integral part of our society. That's already been established this afternoon. Therefore, would you be prepared to initiate some sort of statement to be signed by all party leaders in this place, which aims to show unity, not division, between all communities in Wales, so that we can demonstrate that we are indeed one Wales?
Yeah, well, building on the statement that I've given this afternoon, what's been suggested would build upon that statement. I think it's important. Sometimes people question me, as indeed they will, all members in this chamber, about immigration. And I say to them, well, I ask them, what percentage of the population of Wales is descended from immigrants? The answer, of course, is 100%. Because all of us are. All our families came from somewhere at some point. Where do you draw the line? And that does get people thinking, others dismiss it, as we know, with these things. But yes, I think it's important over the coming days for us all to consider as party leaders how we continue to ensure cohesion amongst our communities, and particularly to ensure that the terrorists do not get their wish, namely to divide people.
And finally, Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, does your government believe that children learn better in larger classes?
It rather depends on a number of factors. The teacher, it depends on the facilities, it depends on the school or facilities the school has, sometimes the age of the building. It will depend on the particular skills or particular specialists within the school. As long as the school delivers the curriculum in a way that parents would expect, then that is the determining factor.
The school inspector here in Wales, Estyn, says, and I quote, "There is much evidence to suggest that teaching and learning are much better in classes under 30. Yet 2 years ago, there were 218 classes with more than 30 pupils in them. Now, today, there are 246 classes with more than 30 pupils in them. Why is your government allowing the number of classes over 30 when the evidence suggests that learning is better below that number? Why are you allowing that number to grow?
Well, you must ask the local authorities that, as you know full well. Local authorities are responsible for delivering education. We have done our bit. We have protected education spending relative to the block grant that we have received. It's a question that's best answered by them.
Oh, that's all right then. We'll just wash our hands and let it happen, will be First Minister. What parents want is to know that teachers have the time to give the appropriate amount of attention to children in a class. Yet there are 7,835 children in classes that contain over 30 pupils. Yet, this year, over 800 teachers and support staff are being made redundant in Wales. How many more pupils are you willing to sit back and see be taught in classes over 30 if it's not your responsibility?
Well, I mean, it shows the Liberal Democrats don't care about outcomes, do they? It's all about figures. If you look at the outcomes, we see prospects improving for Welsh children. We've seen GCSE results improve. We've seen A-level results improve. We've seen extra money being put into schools. We've seen the pupil deprivation grant that her party suggested. Welsh education is moving in the right direction with a level of resources that has been improving. We saw last week the PESA figures when they came out. They said that spending in Wales is 4% higher than England when it comes to education. Incidentally, 7% higher when it came to health and social services, and 1% higher per head than health.
Who's not talking about outcomes now?
And so we see that the resources are in place. The teachers who are working with us are delivering for our pupils, and that is what counts. We are proud of our record on education and the opportunities it gives to so many of our young people.
We now move back to questions on the paper, and question 3 is Keith Davis.
Wnaeth y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad am y cyfryngau yng Nghymru?
Wel, ni'n ymwneud yn llawn gyda'r datblygiadau cyfryngau yng Nghymru. Ni wedi sicrhau rôl ffurfiol yn adolygiad siarter y BBC. Fis diwethaf ysgrifennus ddwywaith at ysgrifennydd gwladol dros ddiwylliant y cyfryngau a chwaraeon yn galw am adolygiadau brys o S4C a sut mae'r BBC yn gweithredu ar gyfer Cymru.
Diolch. Mae gan S4C record ardderchog wrth gynnyrchu raglenni teledu Cymraeg ar gyfer bobl ifanc. A fodd bynnag, mae llai a llai o leisiau Cymraeg ar raglenni teledu iaith Saesneg ar gyfer bobl ifanc. Beth allwn ni wneud yng Nghymru i gynnydd allbwn iaith Saesneg perthnasol ar y teledu a chyfryngau eraill i bobl ifanc yng Nghymru?
Wel, beth rhaid i wneud, wrth gwrs, i sicrhau bod mwy o arian yn cael ei ela ar ddarlledu a rhaglenni sydd yn cael ei wneud yng Nghymru yn Gymraeg, wrth gwrs, ond hefyd yn Saesneg. Achos beth sydd digwydd ys y blynydde yw bod tynnu nôl wedi bod o greu a gwneud rhaglenni trwy cyfrwng Saesneg am Gymru. A felly beth ni fel Llywodraeth wedi gweud yw dylen ni sicrhau, dyle Llywodraeth Daearys Unedig sicrhau 30 miliwn o bunnoedd ychwanegol mwyn sicrhau bod yna mwy o raglenni ar gael i bobl Cymru yn Gymraeg, wrth gwrs, ond hefyd yn Saesneg.
Susie Davies.
Diolch, Llywydd. Un o datblygiadau dymunol ydy 9 mis diwethaf yw'r cytundeb y dylid darlledwyr gwasanaeth gyhoeddus sy'n gweithredu yng Nghymru fod yn atebol i'r cynulliad hwn yn ogystal â Senedd y Daearys Unedig. Ydych chi wedi cael unrhyw drafodiaethau rhagarwainol am sut y gallai hyn weithio yn ymarferol ac yn benodol beth fydd y dylanwad neu pwys y droddiad y cynulliad yng nghyd-testun heb ei datganoli?
Wel, marn i yw, mae fe'n perffaith bosib i sicrhau bod yna atebolrwydd i'r cynulliad i hunan, nid dim ond i Senedd y Daearys Unedig. Ni wedi cael rôl wrth gwrs ffurfiol yn ar siarter i hunan, ond does na ddim reswm pam dyle peth gyfrifoldeb cael ei roi i'r cynulliad ynglyn, nid dim ond S4C, ond darlledu yng Nghymru, mwyn sicrhau bod yna rôl i'r cynulliad hyn. Yn ei datganoli darlledu, mae hwnna wrth gwrs yn rhywbeth arall, bydd yr arian gorfod dilyn wrth gwrs, a ni'n mynd i'r cwestiwn o dylen ni dim ond i edrych ar darlledu yn Gymraeg, neu dyle fod rhywbeth o ddatganoli o darlledu yn Saesneg am Gymru hefyd, ond mae yna gwestiynau cyllidebol yn codi o hynny.
Bethan Jenkins.
Prif Weinidog, ydych chi wedi cael unrhyw trafodaethau gyda Llywodraeth San Steffan neu gyda cwmnïau megis Trinity Minas sydd yn ddiweddar wedi prynu allan Local World ac sydd nawr yn dominyddu'r marchnad papurau newydd yma yng Nghymru. Beth yw'ch barn chi fel Llywodraeth nad yw na pluraliaeth yn y system oherwydd y ffaith bod hyn wedi digwydd ac oes gennych chi concern yn hynny o beth bod na potensial y fydde swyddi lleol yn cael ei golli oherwydd dyna yw track record blaenorol Trinity Minas gyda cai swyddfeydd y Merthyr, yn Eith Guardian ac yn y blaen, sydd yn tanseilio'r hyn y mae papurau newydd lleol yn ceisio ei gwneud?
Wel, wrth gweld y digwyddiadau ynglyn â beth sydd digwydd gyda papurau yn y gorllewin, sef y Cymal yn Journal, sef y Llanelli Star, maen nhw'n papurau sydd yn ynghalon y gymuned, a byddwn ni ddim moyn gweld unrhyw fath o leihad yn y newyddion na'r staff sydd ganddyn nhw. Ni wedi gweld wrth gwrs papurau'n cau yn gyfan gwbl mewn rai rannau o Gymru. Toriadau wedi cael ei wneud ynglyn â newyddiadurwyr ac wrth gwrs llai o newyddion lleol. Un o'r pwyntiau wy'n wneud wrth gwrs yw mae trefn yn cael ei greu fan hyn lle dyw papurau lleol ddim yn enghraifft croestoriau am cynghorau lleol. Os dyn nhw ddim yn ei wneud pwy sydd yn ei wneud So byddwn ni ddim moyn gweld rai o'r pethau sydd wedi digwydd, sef cau papurau, llai o straeon lleol yn cael ei wneud gyda papurau sydd wedi cael ei brynu gan Trinity Minas.
Peter Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, with the comprehensive spending review due next week, and with the BBC Charter up for renewal, there is increasing messages coming out of Westminster about the future of S4C and its funding. What discussions have the Welsh Government had with the UK Government about the future of S4C and whether we can continue to have sustainable funding for the future?
Well, there have been discussions, and it's certainly an issue that I've raised with S4C as well, in the discussions I've had with them. S4C does not have a sustainable base of funding at the moment. It's all very ad hoc, and there is no certainty going forward. We have urged the UK Government to provide that certainty. We will have to wait and see, of course, what the CSR brings in terms of news in that regard.
Question 4, Julie Morgan.
Sir, what assessment has the First Minister made of the recently published Law Commission report on wildlife law?
Well, the Law Commission published its work on the 10th of November. I do welcome the work that has been done on this subject, and of course careful consideration will now be given to the recommendations before deciding on the way forward.
I thank the First Minister for that response. I'm sure the First Minister would agree that the practice of using snares to trap animals can be very cruel and often results in injuries to animals which are not considered pests, including domestic animals. And recent polling by the League Against Cruel Sport showed that 80% of people in Wales support a ban on snares. Given that animal welfare is a devolved issue, what will the impact of this change in the law in England be on the Welsh Government's powers to regulate or ultimately ban the use of snares in Wales?
Well, we have, of course, published an improved code of practice on the use of snares in fox control, which places the welfare of animals at its core. But, of course, what the Law Commission's recommendations will allow us to do is to consider what primary legislation may be needed in the next Assembly in order to ensure that the welfare of animals remains paramount.
Russell George.
First Minister, in its report, the Law Commission recommends the creation of a single set of provisions that consolidate and rationalise all relevant wildlife legislation in England and Wales. Can I ask how you intend to take this recommendation forward, perhaps in conjunction with the UK Government?
We would not see England and Wales legislation as the way forward. In areas that are devolved, then Welsh legislation is considered first and foremost. That's not to say, of course, that there will be some areas, particularly with regard to secondary legislation, where it makes sense to have England and Wales legislation, for example, in the control of invasive species being one example. But certainly in a devolved area, we would not normally look to pursue an England and Wales bill, where a Wales bill in a devolved area would be more appropriate.
Jocelyn Davis.
Officer. First Minister, your recently published Code of Practice on the use of snares in fox control may very well give the impression that the Welsh Government approves of the use of snares in controlling foxes. Can you clarify whether the government does in fact approve of the use of snares?
No, I mean, there's no way of, with current legislation, to our thinking, of banning the use of snares. That would probably require primary legislation. That would be for the next Assembly. But where snares are used, it is important, of course, that the highest standards of animal welfare are respected in their use. It'll be a matter then, based on what the Law Commission has said, for the next Assembly as to how to take forward further provisions with regard to animal welfare.
Question 5, John Griffiths.
Will the First Minister make a statement on Welsh Government policy for a more active and healthier Wales?
Well, the evidence shows physical activity makes a significant contribution to maintaining good health and well-being. And in recognition of this, the Welsh Government, Public Health Wales and Sport Wales have made a joint appointment of a physical activity champion to develop and implement a cross-sector all-Wales physical activity plan.
I'm very pleased to hear that, First Minister. I think it's entirely in keeping with the Welsh Government's stress on a preventative approach to healthcare. In Newport East, I'm working to bring together the Health Board, Newport City Council, the Leisure Trust, and different sports organisations and bodies, along with others, to develop a joint agenda and collective approach to having a more active and healthier population. And it seems to me, First Minister, that one key aspect of that is the health budget being used more for that preventative approach rather than being overly reactive. Would you support that use of health budgets to hopefully take that more preventative and, I would say, progressive approach?
It's a sensible approach, and the member is right. But let me point to one area where that is happening. We have the National Exercise Referral Programme that's funded to the tune of £3.4 million. Those sessions are run in leisure and community centres. That's one example of the preventative agenda. We have, of course, as well, the Physical Activity Executive Group. And I suppose this also is drawn into the concept of prudent healthcare, encouraging people to look after their own health. Not just, of course, within the field of health. There is the Active Travel Wales Act, which, of course, will help to promote cycling and walking, not just as a means of exercise, but as a means of travelling and getting to work. And that, of course, has the added benefit of ensuring that people's health is improved.
Mohammed Ashgar.
Officer, First Minister, one of the aims stated in your documents, creating an active Wales, is to increase participation in sports by all sections of population. The lack of basic English and Welsh has been identified as a major barrier to people from ethnic minority background, particularly older people taking part in sports and recreation. What is the Welsh Government doing to support the teaching of English and Welsh to adults from ethnic minority groups to promote integration and encourage greater participation in sports in Wales? Thank you.
Well, of course, we work with schools, particularly to ensure that young people are able to acquire the languages that they need. We also work with communities to make sure that the availability of lessons, usually in English, particularly in this part of Wales, are concerned. But if there's an issue with regard to being able to promote sport in our ethnic minority communities because of a language issue, the members are welcome to write to me with evidence of that, and that will be something, of course, that can be taken up with the physical activity champion.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd. Prif Weinidog, mae'n anodd byw yn fwy iach os yw ddim amhosib trefnu pwyntiad gyda meddygon teulu i drafod iechyd. A dwi'n cael nifer o gwynion yn ywedig yn ardaloedd megis Penfod, Doc Penfod, Dinbych a Pysgod o bobl yn gofod aros pythefnos o leia erbyn hyn i gael trefniant gyda meddyg teulu ar gyfer pwyntiad cyffredinol o'r math. Nid rhywbeth bris, ond rhywbeth cyffredinol i drafod problemau iechyd. Pa gamau ydych chi'n wneud felly i ehangu gofal sylfaenol yn y mater yma, ac yn ywedig i ehangu y gallu i myfyrwyr nyrsio uwch i fod yn rhan o'r broses yma yn y meddygon teulu?
Wel, wrth gwrs, mae meddygon teulu yn mwy neu lai yn busnesau preifat sydd yn cael i gontractio mewn i'r gwasanaeth iechyd. Rai ddim, wrth gwrs. Nawr, ni'n gwybod bod na rai meddygon teulu sydd yn llawer mwy effeithiol ynglyn â sicrhau bod bobl yn gallu cael y pwyntiadau. Defnyddio'r we, enghraifft, lle mae bobl eisiau cael presgripsiwn newydd neu i wneud pwyntiad ar-lein neu trwyddo'r ffôn. Mae rai eraill wedi ddim yn wneud o gwbl. Ni'n annog, wrth gwrs, meddygon teulu mwyn sicrhau bod nhw'n datblygu technoleg newydd i fod yn fwy effeithiol, ac wrth gwrs i sicrhau bod nhw ddim yn gadael bobl i sefyll am amser sydd yn rhy hir. Fi wedi gweld hwn yn gweithio mewn sawl rhan o Gymru, lle mae llawer yn well i bobl, lle maen nhw'n gallu apwyntiadau mewn sawl gwahaniaeth ffordd, a wedi sicrhau bod yn rhwyddach ac yn gloiach i nhw, felly i gael y pwyntiad hefyd. Melani unrhyw feddygfa i esbonio y ffordd maen nhw'n gweithredu, wrth gwrs, ond bydd yn erbyn i bawb i ystyried ffyrdd newydd a technoleg newydd am y sicrhau bod yn gallu gweld meddyg yn gloiach.
Question 60, Griffith.
Sut yma Llywodraeth Cymru yn sicrhau bod cyllidebau yn cael eu monitro'n effeithiol?
Wel, mae gan Llywodraeth Cymru brosesau sydd wedi eu hen sefydlu ar gyfer cynllunio a monitro gwariant mwyn sicrhau ein bod yn cael y gwerth gorau posibl am yr iawn.
Diolch am eich ateb. Wrth gwrs, mae nifer o gyllidebau Llywodraeth Cymru yn cael eu gweithio'n agos o ran adrannau gyda adrannau yn Llywodraeth San Steffan, ac ni'n ymwybodol o nifer o doriadau sydd wedi digwydd yn y cyd-destun yna. Ond i ni hefyd bellach wedi dysgu bydd Deffra, enghraifft, yn cael toriad o ryw 30% i'w chyllideb y flwyddyn nesaf. Nawr, mae Deffra yn gweithio'n agos iawn gyda Llywodraeth Cymru ar faterion yn enwedig pethau fel bioddiogelwch, enghraifft, pysgodfeydd a'r amgylchedd ac yn y blaen. Llwch chi ddweithio ni pa drafodaethau chi fel Llywodraeth wedi cael gyda Deffra Llywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig cyn dod i'r penderfyniad bod hi'n addas i dorri 30% o'r gyllideb honno, a sut y byddwch chi'n monitro effaith hynny ar wasanaethau Llywodraeth Cymru, oherwydd mi fydd yn ddiamheuol o roi pwysau ychwanegol ar y cyllidebau chi?
Dyn ni ddim bod yn rhan o'r trafodaethau hynny, maen nhw wedi bod yn trafodaethau sydd wedi cymryd lle rhwng adrannau Whitehall a hefyd y Trysorlus yn Whitehall. Ni'n clywed beth sydd wedi cael ei ddweud ynglyn â Deffra. Mae'n wir i weid, wrth gwrs, bod Deffra yn cynnig gwasanaethau i adnoddau naturiol Cymru, ac wrth gwrs, bydd ni'n gwneud asesiad unwaith bydd ni'n gwybod beth yn gwmws, bydd natur y toriadau yng nghyllideb Deffra.
Angela Burns.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, in regard to budgets, I'd like to raise a point regarding the 1% additional funding to schools in Wales. We know the increase in funding for schools via the Revenue Support Grant for 2010-11 to 15-16 was actually 0.83%, not 1%. However, during the scrutiny session by the Children, Young People and Education Committee, the Education Minister told us that authorities will continue to be required to evidence the 1% commitment being built into their budgets for 2015-16. First Minister, does this mean that the revenue support grant, which is, to my understanding, supposed to be unhypothecated, is indeed not unhypothecated after all? And if so, how will you actually monitor that they really are reserving 1% as per your election and manifesto promise?
We monitor it by looking at their budgets. We expect them to deliver on the pledge that the government was elected on in 2011, and we see that pledge being evidenced in the fact that the PESA figures last week showed that 4% per head more is spent in Wales on education than is the case in England.
Question 7, Jenny Rathbone.
Thank you. What discussions has the First Minister had about the changes to the justice system in Wales?
Well, we have regular discussions with the UK Government, with the judiciary and others about changes to the justice system. We've made strong representations regarding the likely impact of proposed court closures in Wales, and there have been discussions on the need for training for the judiciary as Welsh law develops.
First Minister, I'm sure you're aware that there are now increasing charges for anybody who appears in court for that privilege, and so that somebody up for a very minor offence is charged at least £150, even if they plead guilty, and up to £1,000 if they're convicted having pleaded not guilty. And the charges are even higher if it goes to the Crown Court. And because it costs far less to plead guilty than it does to plead not guilty, there is obviously a perverse incentive to plead guilty even if the defendant is not guilty. Many magistrates have actually resigned from the bench as a result of having to uphold the law, but feeling very concerned about this flat rate application of fees, regardless of the circumstances of the individual. It seems to me it undermines Magna Carta, and I just wondered what, if anything, the Welsh Government can do about it.
Well, I've put my view on the record that, put my view strongly on the record that this measure makes our justice system look more like a racket to raise money, and that is hugely unfortunate to say the least. Whilst it has been the case for many years that a guilty plea, particularly at an early stage, attracts a lower sentence, it's never been the case that there's an increase in the financial penalty simply for having the effrontery to seek a trial, which is what this proposal is about. On a practical level, of course, as somebody who worked in the system, the vast majority of people who come through the criminal justice system are in no position to pay this money. They won't be able to pay it. So, in fact, what is seen as a money-raising or revenue-raising measure by the Ministry of Justice is not going to raise much by way of money because so many of the people who come before the courts have no money. So it's a double penalty. It imposes an unaffordable burden on those who can afford it the least. And if you look at it from the way that the Ministry of Justice looks at it, it won't raise money either.
Jonathan Saunders.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, in revising the Mental Health Act Code of Practice for Wales, what considerations will your Welsh Government be giving to the recommendations of the latest report into North Wales police custody suites, in particular of the need for the services of mental health practitioners to be available to all detainees in North Wales?
We would be more than happy to do that if policing was devolved, but your party unfortunately stands against that.
Devolved.
Question 8, Aled Roberts.
A wnaeth y Prif Weinidog roi'r wybodaeth ddiweddaraf am gynllunio flaen llaw ar gyfer gwelliannau i'r A55.
Wel, ni bob amser yn ceisio cyfuno gwaith pan fo modd mwyn tarfu cynllued a phosibl. Mae gwaith ffordd yn cael ei hysbysebu ymlaen llaw yn y wasg leol, a mae diweddariadau i'w cael bob amser ar ein gwefan traffig Gymru.
Mae'n rhaid mi ddweud bod rhan fwy o pobl y gogledd yn gresynu efo rhai o'r datganiadau sydd wedi cael ei gwneud gan y Gweinidog yn ystod yr wythnosol, a mae'n deud mai natur y gyrru ar yr A55 sy'n creu rhai o'r anawsterau. Hynny, dwi yn croesawu'r ffaith bod yna waith yn mynd ymlaen sydd ar gost o ryw 40 miliwn, ond wrth gofio bod yna welliannau i'r cylchfannau ym Mhenmaen Fawr a Llanfair Fechan yn ystod y flwyddyn sydd i ddod, a'r ffaith bod yr asiantaeth cefnffyrdd wedi cael ei gymryd i fewn i'r Llywodraeth, ydych chi yn hollol sicr bod yr holl drefniadau sydd angen i wneud yn cael ei gwneud, a newch chi sicrhau bod yr holl drafferthion dyn ni wedi gweld yn ystod y deifi sol yma ddim yn mynd i cael ei adlewyrchu flwyddyn nesaf?
Ie, wrth gwrs i ddysgu o'r profiad, does dim modd ddim wneud y gwaith. Mae hwnna'n bwysig i ddweud, mae hwnna'n fuddsoddiad sylweddol i'r A55. Mae'n rhaid gofio wrth gwrs bod yr A55 wedi cael ei adeiladu ar y chip yn yr 80au. Byddwn ni byth yn adeiladu hewl fel nawr, gyda cylchfannau, gyda toneli sydd dim ond yn ddwy lôn, So felly mae rhaid ni ddelio gyda sefyllfa sydd gyda ni ar hyn o bryd. Ond mae'r toneli yn gorfod cael ei wneud. Ni yn ystyried wrth gwrs ym mha ffordd allwn ni i wella cyffyrdd 15 ac 1 ar 15 ac wrth gwrs i ystyried nid dim ond yr A55 ond lle mae'r A55 yn dod yn rhan o'r A494 hefyd. Mae hwnna'n waith sylweddol a buddsoddiad sylweddol bydd yn cael ei roi mewn i economi Gogledd Cymru ac wrth gwrs i rwydwaith economi Cymru. So na, dwi ddim yn rwyd i bobl. Y reswm pam yna giwi yna yw achos y gwaith sy'n cael ei wneud yn y toneli. I gyd yn gwybod hynny. Ond beth lle weid yw, fi'n gwybod bod nhw yn gweithio 24 awr y dydd, 7 diwrnod yr wythnos mwyn sicrhau bod y gwaith yn dod i ben mor gynted as sy'n bosib.
Janet Howarth.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, I recently attended the North Wales Coastal Mayors Summit. And they came together to discuss the disruption and economic cost of the ongoing improvements and roadworks on the A55 along the North Wales coast. First Minister, these mayors expressed grave concern about the lack of community consultation, with further works planned to remove 3 roundabouts and erect 3 flyovers along this stretch of road. What guarantees can you offer to the people living along the North Wales coast that thorough consultations will now take place in a timely fashion?
Well, I spoke to the mayors of Llanfairpwll and Penmaen Mawr last week. They understood the need for the work to be done. They simply asked to be kept updated, amongst other things, in terms of how the work would progress. Yes, letting people know what's proposed is important, but we can't escape the fact that the A55 does need extensive maintenance. It was built to a standard below the standard that we would have built that road now. But nevertheless, as a government, we have shown that we are willing, of course, to put in the substantial investment that is needed, whether it's through the tunnels, whether it's through junctions 15 to 16, or whether it's through, of course, the D-side corridor where the A55 meets the A494.
Rhys Iorwerth.
Diolch Llywydd. Allai ddim gorbwysleisio rhwystredigaeth sy'n cael ei deimlo gan ddefnyddwyr yr A55 pan mae profiad yn deitha ni pan mae un darn o waith yn cael ei gwblhau ar y ffordd bod na ddarn arall o waith ffordd ar fi'n dechrau. Ydy'r Prif Weinidog yn cytuno efo fi y galla'r Llywodraeth fod yn llawer iawn mwy rhagweithiol yn y ffordd y maen nhw yn hysbysebu pobl sy'n defnyddio'r A55 ynglyn â gwaith sy'n digwydd a sy'n mynd i fod yn digwydd yn y dyfodol yr amseru ag ati yr amserlenni fel bod pobl drwy gyfathrebu yn gallu gwybod cael gwell darlun o'r hyn sy'n mynd i fod yn digwydd ar y ffordd i'r dyfodol.
Wel, ni wastad yn ceisio wneud hwnna. Os mae yna bwyntiau gan fod i'n wneud ynglyn â'r ffordd gathon ni ynglyn â'r gwaith ar y toneli. Ni digon parod wrth gwrs i ystyried beth allwn ni wneud yn y pen draw er mwyn gwella pethau.
Thank you, First Minister. I have accepted an urgent question under Standing Order 12.66.